Welcome back to Motion Pick Recap. Today we're going to recap the action, adventure and comedy movie titled, The Three Musketeers. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. A man called Gerard says his sister's honor is at stake, and a man called D'Artagnan replies she just wanted to give him something to remember her by, since he's going to Paris to join the Musketeers like his father. Gerard comments his father was a disgrace since the king was assassinated. Suddenly, Gerard loses his sword, and says his brothers will avenge him, and immediately D'Artagnan sees his brothers riding towards them. A chase ensues, and one after the other, D'Artagnan manages to lose them. Eventually, the only one left is Gerard. D'Artagnan jumps over an obstacle, but Gerard is not as skillful, and yells at D'Artagnan with a voice-cracking voice they will get him. Somewhere in Paris, soldiers are ordered to burn the Musketeer flag by a man called Rochefort, who then walks out on a balcony, telling Musketeers that the Musketeers are now officially disbanded. They ask angrily who will defend the king, and Rochefort answers His Eminence Cardinal Richelieu's guard will. He orders them to disperse, and if just one resists, they all will be arrested, and the Musketeers begin to leave. Later, the Cardinal and Rochefort are talking, and the Cardinal remarks the Musketeers are finished, but Rochefort says there are 3 left. The Cardinal orders him to bring them in at once. Rochefort slices some candles, and counts the names, Athos, Porthos, and Aramis. D'Artagnan arrives just outside Paris when he sees 2 men on horses following 2 girls. D'Artagnan surprises them, and takes out the first one, and then knocks out the second one. The women return, asking if he knows what he's done. He replies he saved them from the bandits, and they laugh, responding they are the Queen's bodyguards. One of them asks his name, and thanks him for the entertainment. As she rides, D'Artagnan asks her name, and she replies it's Constance. Later, he arrives at the Musketeer headquarters. As he runs into the building, a man draws his sword. D'Artagnan asks where everyone is, and the man called Athos answers the Musketeers were disbanded. D'Artagnan comments he's not very helpful, and Athos replies he needs some lessons in manners and challenges him to a duel at the city ruins. Suddenly, Gerard and his brothers arrive, seeing D'Artagnan. He asks a boy to guard his horse, and runs away. However, not long after, he causes trouble, and a man called Porthos tells him he ruined his sash that was a gift to him from the Queen of America. D'Artagnan says there's no Queen of America, and Porthos says he begs to differ, challenging him to a duel. Somewhere else, a man called Aramis reads a book when a woman suddenly kisses him. He comments he's her tutor, and she begs for forgiveness, but Aramis can't help himself and continues kissing her. Suddenly someone tries to kick the door in, and she exclaims it's her husband. He says they have to pray for their sins, but on second thought, he suddenly remarks that God is awfully busy and runs. He lands on D'Artagnan, apologizing for it, but D'Artagnan says his apology is not accepted. Aramis says the only thing he can't tolerate is rudeness and challenges him to a duel. At the palace, the Cardinal walks in on Queen Anna. He comments she looks unhappy, and Anna responds she feels lonely, saying ever since their wedding day, she and the king have barely spoken, remarking the king seems so uncertain. The Cardinal explains they thought their arranged marriage would bring Austria and France closer together. The king, Louis XIII, is announced entering the room. Anna asks if she should leave, but Louis asks her in a soft tone to please stay. He then forcefully demands an answer from the Cardinal why he disbanded the Musketeers, since he had not approved the timing of it. The Cardinal gives some bogus answer that he thought it was best to act quickly since they are at the brink of war with England. Louis then tells the Cardinal that he himself will be the judge what is best for him and France, and Anna seems to like his forceful behavior. Later, the Cardinal explains to Rochefort the king is becoming as troublesome as his father. In the city, the Cardinal's guards storm into a house where other guards are bound to chairs. They ask what is happening, and Athos and Aramis explain they are having a private party and tell them to go away. Rochefort appears saying they are under arrest, and the two remark the last time they saw him was the day he was cast out of the Musketeers. Suddenly Porthos appears, causing a wooden chandelier to fall on the guards. They tell Rochefort they will continue to perform their sworn duty to protect the king, and leave. Athos tells D'Artagnan it's over 12 o'clock and he's late, and suddenly Porthos and Aramis appear, telling Athos they themselves have duels with him. D'Artagnan remarks their duels are not until 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock. D'Artagnan is surprised they are all Musketeers, and as they're about to start, the Cardinal's guards appear to arrest them. The guards ask if they are coming peacefully, but Porthos remarks they are stupid, that of course they will intend to resist, asking to give them a moment. They discuss strategy, and then D'Artagnan cuts in saying he can help. They approve and introduce each other, after which they say they are now prepared to resist. They start to fight, and one after the other, Athos, Porthos, and Aramis, take out their opponents. Once the three have gathered, they comment they are surprised that D'Artagnan is still alive. Suddenly D'Artagnan gets his opponent to slip. Afterwards, D'Artagnan explains he came to join the Musketeers, but they tell D'Artagnan to go back home since the Musketeers are just a dream, and they leave him. Suddenly Rochefort and other guards appear, and being alone, D'Artagnan shouts, "Long live the Musketeers," and charges, which Rochefort does too. D'Artagnan falls off his horse, and they knock him unconscious. In a cell somewhere, Rochefort asks D'Artagnan where he stole his magnificent sword, and D'Artagnan explains it belonged to his father. Rochefort tells him he can have it back if he tells him where the three Musketeers are hiding, but D'Artagnan just answers he'd kill him if he got his sword back, and Rochefort knocks him unconscious, remarking he's an idiot like his father, and tells a man to take him below. However, D'Artagnan suddenly wakes up. He sneaks through a prison dungeon, seeing Rochefort, and starts following them. They lead a woman to a room where the cardinal is. The cardinal calls her Milady de Winter and is about to touch her when she picks up a knife, saying with a flick of her wrist she can change his religion. He comments he forgot her lovers tend to end up dead. The cardinal says he has a new mission for her, saying she must carry a treaty to the Duke of Buckingham to make an alliance with England so that he can take over France. She accepts, calling him His Majesty. Suddenly, Rochefort finds D'Artagnan. A while later, the cardinal asks what his name is, and when D'Artagnan answers, the cardinal finds the name familiar, and Rochefort reminds him. The cardinal remarks his father was a musketeer, and D'Artagnan confirms, explains he died while protecting the king. He asks D'Artagnan where the three musketeers are, but he refuses to tell him. Next up, D'Artagnan is brought to the gallows, and Rochefort remarks D'Artagnan now wishes he'd never heard of the Musketeers. In the crowd, Gerard and his brothers appear, and Gerard laughs, shouting to D'Artagnan not to lose his head. Suddenly, the executioner says his axe was a gift to him from the Tsarina of Tokyo, and the priest makes a prayer, adding all for one and one for all. Suddenly, they start fighting off the cardinal's guards, and Gerard starts screaming with a girl's voice to stop them. The cardinal notes they've taken his carriage. They all jump in and take off, and Gerard just continues screaming. Soon after, they find gold and alcohol in the carriage, and they task D'Artagnan to redistribute the gold to the people. The cardinal says he'll give 1,000 gold pieces for each of their heads, dead or alive, but preferably dead. The cardinal's guards start chasing them. Porthos asks Athos if he wants champagne. Athos says they're in the middle of a chase, and Porthos remarks he's right, they need something red instead. He hands over a bottle, after which they start exchanging fire with the cardinal's guards. D'Artagnan starts explaining the cardinal is sending a treaty to the Duke of Buckingham, and that there's a ship waiting in Calais to take a messenger to England. Suddenly, Athos yells to D'Artagnan to turn right. The cardinal's guards are stopped temporarily by the obstacle. Simultaneously, the Musketeers drive straight through a military outpost. They jump off the wagon soon after, pour brandy over it, some gunpowder, and light it on fire, after which they push it towards the camp. People start yelling it's headed towards the gunpowder, and everybody runs. While the cardinal's guards run for their lives, D'Artagnan and the others escape and ride for the coast. The cardinal is informed the Musketeers have been sighted riding towards Calais, and he sends birds so that every bounty hunter in France will be waiting for them. That evening, the Musketeers rest at a tavern, and Porthos makes a joke, telling some women that a queen is no different from a barmaid in the dark. He then starts teaching D'Artagnan in the art of wenching, showing him how to kiss a woman passionately, so that it leaves a strong and masculine impression. Aramis cuts in, saying words can make a more lasting impression, demonstrating for them with a poem, and the woman thinks it was beautiful. D'Artagnan makes an attempt, starting out with a poem, but says it wrong, and immediately goes in for the kiss instead. Porthos is impressed, who then begins dancing to a lively tune. D'Artagnan asks where Athos is, and Aramis explains he's drinking. He walks up to Athos, who asks what they should drink to, and D'Artagnan replies they should drink to love. Athos then begins telling a story of a young man, a count, who fell in love with a beautiful woman, who he married. As they were riding through the forest one day, his love fell off her horse and was knocked unconscious. As he rushed to her aid, he noticed a mark on her body he'd never seen before, a fleur-de-lis, the mark given to those who are to be executed for murder. He became crushed, and as she had woken up, she swore she'd been falsely accused, but the man didn't believe her and banished her from his province. When the guards came to take her away to be executed, she was still professing her undying love for him. Not long after, The Count realized what a mistake he had made, and how his betrayal was far greater than hers. He gave up his titles, his land, everything, never to be seen or heard of again, all because of love. Suddenly Porthos appears, and Athos hits him, and they laugh. The next day, they ride, and suddenly, they are shot at with cannonballs. They quickly start riding to escape, but suddenly are confronted by enemy riders. They split up and ride in different directions. In Paris, Constance is talking with Anna and explains her heart started pounding so hard when she met D'Artagnan, but can't understand why since they met only for a moment. Anna explains she first thought she'd never feel happy when her marriage was arranged, but as she saw Louis for the first time, she felt just like her seeing D'Artagnan. Constance goes to get her robe, but when Anna receives it, she's shocked to notice it's the cardinal giving her it. She asks him what he's doing there, and he explains he's worried about the king's happiness, saying the king is postponing his birthday celebration. Anna replies he may be concerned with more important matters, like the coming war with England, and the cardinal responds that's why they need to celebrate it, to show the world that France is strong, saying the king will listen to her. He then starts touching her inappropriately, saying he wants her to know how much they can accomplish together for France, and she tells him to leave. He yells at her that kings come and go, but that he remains. In the woods, Athos tells D'Artagnan he's as much of a musketeer as his father. D'Artagnan is surprised he knew his father, but Athos explains it was only through reputations, since his father uncovered a plot to kill the king, but was betrayed by another musketeer who murdered him. Suddenly, they are shot at, and Athos's horse is killed. While loading their guns, Athos tells him he needs to get to the coast and stop the messenger. First D'Artagnan refuses and wants to stay and help, but Athos tells him he'll kill him himself if he doesn't go, and D'Artagnan rides. In Paris, the king is practicing fencing when the cardinal walks in on them. Louis informs him he's heard troubling rumors about his behavior. The cardinal replies that if there are any doubts about his loyalty, they'll be laid to rest when they appear together celebrating his birthday. Louis tries to explain how he wants to skip the celebration when the cardinal interrupts him, saying Anna is very eager to attend, and Louis becomes happy and changes his mind. The cardinal remarks it will be an event to remember. At the coast, D'Artagnan suddenly falls off his horse in fatigue. Later, a carriage passes by, and a man tells Milady de Winter he seems to be injured, and she asks them to bring him with them. Next, D'Artagnan wakes up beside Milady de Winter. He runs up, asking where his clothes are. She asks his name, and D'Artagnan answers, after which he asks hers, and she explains she's Countess de Winter by marriage, but that her husband is dead, and starts touching him. D'Artagnan tells her he has important business, on a mission for the king, and needs to go. She says his clothes will not be ready for at least an hour, so he'll have to stay. She says she doesn't believe he's on a mission, but says she loves stories and asks if he could tell his. D'Artagnan explains he came to stop a spy in Calais, and suddenly she says she believes him, and tells him that if the spy would find out about him, his life could be in grave danger. He answers he's not afraid of danger because he's a musketeer. She walks up and starts kissing him, and suddenly D'Artagnan sees she's about to stab him, and they begin to fight. Wrestling on the floor, he sees a fleur-de-lis on her shoulder, and she yells for help. Her men come in, kick him, and take him. Perhaps getting used for him, they bring him with them. On their way out, a man tells another man that Milady de Winter murdered his brother and asks if she's there, and they take another exit. In the harbor some time later, the party arrives, and they ask for permission to come aboard a ship, to which someone replies permission granted. They go aboard, but when talking to the crew, they realize something's wrong and shout to each other they are all dead. But then Aramis appears saying not all of them. Porthos appears too, and they both start fighting them. Porthos starts fighting the Asian man who held D'Artagnan, in his own clever way. Milady de Winter runs, but doesn't get far before running into Athos, who suddenly calls her Sabine. She runs, but is stopped by Athos, who says he thought she was dead. She explains the cardinal took pity over her. Realizing she's the spy, he demands her to hand over the treaty, but she refuses. He says he will shoot, and she requests him to be kind and shoot her in the heart, but he can't, and suddenly the man whose brother was killed appears stopping her. They get the treaty, and find that the treaty demands a demonstration of the cardinal's power to become valid, which they don't understand. Athos goes to ask Sabine, who tells him there was a time she would have given her life for a kind word from him, and Athos remarks he was a fool. He asks if she truly killed the man's brother, and she explains she has become the nightmare he once thought she was. He asks her to help them understand the cardinal's plans. She asks if they can set her free, but Athos tells her they can't, and she replies she'll take the secret to her grave. The next morning, they have sentenced her and all go to execute her. Aramis prays, and she is told to get down on her knees. As they are about to execute her, Athos yells to stop, asking Sabine to please forgive him, which she does and kisses him. She suddenly reveals the cardinal plans to assassinate the king on his birthday, after which she stands up, backs off, and jumps off the cliff. They pray, after which Athos says the king's life is in danger. In Paris, Rochefort tells the cardinal the assassin can shoot like this every time, and the cardinal remarks he's impressed, and asks Rochefort to hang the painting in his chamber, just as it is. Next up, D'Artagnan and the Musketeers ride for Paris, leaving notes behind for their comrades, and in every part of the country they ride through, men are picking out Musketeer capes and swords. The day of the king's birthday has arrived, and Athos tells D'Artagnan to search the perimeter while they go to find the king. Inside, Louis and Anna meet, and Louis comments she looks beautiful, but sees she's worried and asks if something's wrong. She explains the cardinal is an evil man, and Louis replies he knows. Anna asks what they should do, and Louis says he's not sure, but that they'll do it together. Outside, D'Artagnan sees a balcony, and then someone on the roof aiming at it. He runs as fast as he can, and as Louis and Anna are walking out on the balcony, D'Artagnan appears and hits the assassin such that the rifle goes off. Panic spreads, and Athos, Aramis and Porthos appear from the crowd. The cardinal shouts to his guards to kill the Musketeers, who are trying to murder the king. But then suddenly, from behind them, men start appearing, removing their outer clothes, revealing their Musketeer capes, and Athos shouts the words, "Save the king." They all start fighting against the cardinal's guards, all while D'Artagnan is struggling with the assassin on the roof. None of the cardinal's guards seem to have any chance against them. Porthos is using his inventions, and Aramis is praying for all who die by his hand. D'Artagnan falls, and hangs in a flag while continuing to fight. Athos asks Porthos to help D'Artagnan, and with a small crossbow, he manages to take out the assassin. Inside, Louis tells the cardinal he has failed, but the cardinal says he couldn't plan it better himself, explaining the people will know how the king died by the sword of a musketeer, and how he as the spiritual leader so humbly ascends the throne. Suddenly, Musketeers storm the room, and Athos ironically says he hopes they aren't interrupting, and they begin to fight. Meanwhile, the cardinal brings away Anna and Louis. Rochefort suddenly manages to stab Athos in the shoulder, but Athos still continues. Aramis stops the cardinal, telling the cardinal he's under arrest for treason. But then the cardinal picks up a gun and shoots him. Porthos sees him, and runs up to him. Athos kicks Rochefort so that he loses his sword. D'Artagnan appears, saying the sword belongs to him, and Athos leaves. Rochefort comments now they'll see if he's as brave and foolish as his father was. At the other side of the hall, Aramis suddenly wakes up, telling them to look, remarking there is a god, and they start chasing after the cardinal. They arrive in the dungeon, and split up. A big man starts fighting Porthos, who manages to kick the man onto a torturing device. D'Artagnan continues fighting Rochefort, but suddenly, D'Artagnan loses his sword, which Constance sees. Rochefort comments how pathetic it is that he will be killed by the same man who killed his father, and throws him down the stairs. As Rochefort is about to kill him, D'Artagnan gets his sword and avenges his father by piercing him. Constance appears and they grab each other's hands while resting on the stairs. Athos catches up with the cardinal, fighting the guards coming his way. Porthos appears to help him, and Athos asks where he's been, to which Porthos answers he's been taking care of something ugly. They run down, and the cardinal shouts back they are too late, since the Duke of Buckingham has signed the treaty by now. Athos shows him the treaty never left France, and the cardinal remarks it's a minor problem, that he'll return twice as strong. Aramis appears, saying he thinks not, knocking out the guards, and then the king rises and knocks the cardinal off the boat. Louis asks Anna if she's alright, and they hug each other. Some time afterwards, the four appear before the king, and the king grants D'Artagnan's wish to become a musketeer. He receives his cape, and all the musketeers cheer. As Constance walks up and kisses him, Porthos sheds a tear of joy. They put on their hats and walk out. Outside, D'Artagnan catches up with them, asking what happens now, and they remark they will protect the king. Suddenly, Gerard is heard screaming D'Artagnan's name. D'Artagnan says he'll handle it, but then they tell him they also protect each other. They cross their swords and shout, "All for one, and one for all," and Gerard screams at his brothers to run. The end. Thank you for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you'd like to see more videos like this, and hit the like button to help us out. Until next time, take care.